Hey, everybody, this is Bob Goodwin, and welcome to another episode of Career Club Live. I am super excited about today's episode. There's so much hype and talk and everything about AI, and yet there's very few people that have actually put wheels on the ground and actually have something that works, have experience to share. And so today's guest is that person. So Matt Burns is the co-founder of Atlas Copilot. I'm going to read this because his background is very impressive. A forward-thinking HR tech startup focused on harnessing data and AI to help organizations streamline people operations, enhance employee engagement, and improve overall workplace culture. Matt is a seasoned HR executive. He actually knows the space that he's helping solve for. And an entrepreneur, Matt brings over 15 years of experience in HR leadership, change management, and digital transformation. Known for his practical insights and approachable style, Matt frequently speaks on the importance of leveraging technology without losing the human touch, which is key, to build inclusive and high-performing teams. So with that, Matt Burns, welcome.
Always a pleasure, Bob. Thanks for having me.
It is so great to have you. Thank you. So where do we find you today?
I'm in beautiful Medellin, Colombia
Where
today.
else would you be? So,
Where else would I be?
and where else might we find you sometimes?
Montreal, Canada, London, England, New York. I get around.
Yeah, you do get around a little bit, but it sounds like you picked the right climate for. We're recording this in February, so yeah, that's smart. So, again, Matt, honestly, not reading any words, but just genuinely excited about today's conversation for our listeners because I get the same news feeds everybody gets and read the same newspapers and stuff, and there is so much hype, but kind of I'm going to date myself. The Wendy's commercial, "Where's the beef?" There doesn't seem to be a lot of beef. There's a lot of bun, but there's not a lot of beef.
A lot of
And,
fun.
and I'm hoping that we can unpack that here just a little bit. So with that, I kind of talked, at a high level a little bit about your HR experience. Do you mind just sort of, level setting for people in just a minute or so about you are a practitioner of HR, and then, kind of get into the origin story of Atlas and why you and your co-founder started Atlas.
Yeah, 20 years in the corporate world, 15 of those were in HR, five as an HR executive, primarily with large multinational corporations like Walmart, among others. And I spent the first part of my career as an HR business partner. So, as somebody who worked with line managers in the business, whether that was a retail location or an executive, helping them understand things like talent management and employee relations and total rewards.
Yep.
Throughout my career, I built a bit of a reputation by being somebody that you would never think was actually in HR, which I kind of took at the time as a bit of a badge of honor. And I've since evolved my thinking since then. But that being said, what they meant by that was I can read a P&L statement. I can have a
Yes.
conversation in the context of business. I can understand that there's a very real business imperative to treat your employees with respect. So I make that case. I can make the moral argument because I also believe that employees should be treated with respect. But I also know that in our current environment where publicly traded companies often live quarter to quarter, it's the dollar that makes the biggest difference. And if I can make a compelling case to say, let's do things the right way, let's treat our people, let's empower our people, and we can all make more money at the same time, it's literally a win-win. So that's been my approach. That being said, I was never a deep technical expert in HR. I was never the guy you came to and said, Matt, what's the labor relations code in Illinois and how's it different than Massachusetts? Like, I could find it out and I could then convey it compelling, but I had many colleagues that were very deep technical experts. I was a generalist, and that really served me well as somebody who likes to have his hands in lots of different things. But what that meant was I was pulling disparate streams of information. I was pulling context from the company, whether that be data or insights. I was pulling previous conversations with individuals. I was pulling on my own experiences. I was synthesizing information to give insights and guidance to business. And that's artificial intelligence, as I would come to find out. That's exactly what it does. So 18 months ago, when myself and four co-founders came together, we said, let's build the tool that we always wanted to build in HR, but we just didn't have the technology to do. That led to Atlas Copilot. And it's a fantastic tool. It's the world's first AI copilot specifically for HR professionals. We curate the technology entirely around HR use cases. If you ask Atlas to quote, from the 16th century French literature, it's not going to be able to help you.
Right.
But if you ask questions about labor standards in Japan and want to know how it's different than in Saudi Arabia, we can help you with that. And we're trying to continually evolve our platform to meet evolving needs of the market. I'm looking forward to that conversation today.
Yep. No, so that's great. And you're right. I remember one time, I think it was Jamie Dimon who gets credit for this, but in the early days of the internet, he's like, it's like walking into a library and all the books are on the floor. It's like, I know it's in here someplace, I just can't find it,
Yeah.
right? And it's going to take too much time to find it. Well, kind of fast forward 30 years, and that's kind of what I see you guys doing with Atlas Copilot is getting this data. I just need the answer, right?
Correct.
And I don't want to go through 20 links and have to call 15 different people, and maybe they know what they're talking about, maybe they don't, right? And then find the answer that I'm looking for. What do you guys hope are like the key benefits that over time as Atlas is more in the marketplace and it continues to evolve itself? What do you hope the key benefits are people start to realize from a tool like this?
So I think short term, we're hoping to transition HR work from transactional into more relationship oriented. We want to remove as much mundane administrivia as possible. So if that's research or document creation or analysis or translation, AI does that at a fraction of the speed and a fraction of the cost, and Atlas Copilot can do that for you in an HR context. I think in the medium to long term, I'm really interested in transforming organizations and making them better places to work. And I think that starts with HR people. I think if we can empower HR people to be more customer facing, which in this case would be employee facing, I think they can intervene and have more of an impact. And I also think as a longer term vision, Bob, if I could wave a magic wand and say what I want to achieve is I'm hoping in some way we can affect mental health in a really positive way. I think that if we create better workplaces that are more employee centric and still are profitable and serve the customer, that we can improve mental health. And I believe that if we do that through large organizations and their HR teams, we can have a very outsized impact that as opposed to a one-on-one, we can affect one to many. So that's our longer term vision. But in the short term, we're focused on how do we support HR people in doing their best work and let them decide how to spend their time.
Yeah, it's interesting, but just on the mental health piece, because so much of what is in the press or at a cocktail party is I'm stressed out because of AI, and
Yeah.
it's going to come take my job, and this is what I do, this is what I know how to do, and it's this thing going to come and take my job away from me. How would you react to that?
It might, but I don't think it will in the short term. And I think that you'll have the ability to evolve your practice, your profession to be able to meet that need. The reality is the train's left the station. AI can't go back in the box. Like it's not, we're going forward with AI. And whether you like that or don't, I understand. And there's definitely some arguments to be made around will it reduce cognition in the short term? Probably. If people are just typing in questions and getting answers, does it require as much critical thinking? Not really as much. But I think it's cyclical. I think it's cyclical insofar as whenever there's a new technology that's adopted, we all scurry around the most basic and transactional use cases. Think
Yeah.
about the cell phone, think about the internet. But over time, as it evolves, it becomes a complement to what we're doing. And I actually think that once you remove all the hysteria attached to AI, it's actually a force multiplier and it creates opportunities. It's just a matter of it's hard to see through that if you're looking at AI through the lens of today because it will disrupt today. But if tomorrow means that I spend less time doing administrivia in my business, or if I'm able to spend more time with my stakeholders, that's a win. It might be a bumpy path to get there, but it's all the more reason why HR professionals should be looking at tools and providers to help them make that transition because it's one we can make together and it can really, Bob, I've been building business cases in companies for 20 years. Right, building cases for transformation or digital transformation, and I worked in companies that largely expected payback in the same fiscal year that you incurred the cost. They ran basically cash businesses, even though they were massive organizations. And that taught for me a real discipline around how do you build a compelling business case, but also affect positive change. AI is one of the few things that I've seen, might be the only thing that I've seen, that you can actually save money and time and improve the experience of somebody simultaneously. More often than not, you're trading off between efficiency and quality. With AI, you don't have to. It just requires intentionality in how you construct it and how you deploy it.
Yeah, better, faster, cheaper, pick two. Well, maybe that's a false choice in
Right.
some cases, right? But to your point, like we don't need to evangelize people on AI at this point. As you say, the train has left the station. The genie's not going back in the bottle. Pick your favorite metaphor. We're going in this direction. Um, our mutual friend Johnny Taylor from SHRM, says AI is not going to take your job. Somebody who knows how to make effective use of AI is going to take your job. So you might want to get good at using the tool. It's sort of like I was really good on a 10 key calculator, and then Lotus 1, 2, 3 or spreadsheets came out. Like, well, yeah, and guess what? So the other thing I want to go back to a point that you made about how AI hopefully can kind of take some of the, what do you call it, administrivia, uh,
Yeah.
out of work, and the things that are more mundane, just sort of very, very transactional. And also what you said about one of the distinguishing characteristics of your career, which is being able to tie HR to business results. And one of my hopes, and I'd like to hear you talk about this, one of my hopes is that HR will help, or HR AI will help HR people become, level up their game to really be more business partners, right? Because if this isn't just about kind of what's the compliance law in Illinois around X, like you were saying, but rather like how do we really make a direct connection between employee engagement and our productivity or our innovation or retention or whatever some of the KPIs might be that we know have a direct correlation to the business. I
Yep.
wonder if you could talk about that.
Yeah, I just think that we have to be realistic about why businesses exist. Most of them exist to make money. So let's just call that out. And I don't think that's a bad thing to say. And we can argue capitalism versus different modalities another time. But we're in a capitalist society where most companies that are in the market are either small to medium business run by entrepreneurs or they're publicly traded. And in both cases, they're trying to make money and they're trying to grow and they're trying to have success. And I think a misnomer has been that traditionally people have thought that that has to come at the expense of the human experience. I have to exploit my labor. I have to get a deal on their wages to maximize my profitability. I have to reduce my workforce and make them work harder so I can take more back. And I don't think that's the case anymore. I think AI is such a force multiplier that you don't need to make that decision as binary. You need to be thoughtful about how you integrate it into your systems because to me, it is an opportunity to redesign your service level agreement with your client. It's an opportunity to extend your services. It's an opportunity to put people in front of the work they actually want to be doing. Bob, you've interviewed hundreds, if not thousands, of HR leaders. Can you tell me the HR leader that talked to you and said, I love my job because of the spreadsheets I look at every single day?
I haven't interviewed that guest yet, but hope springs eternal.
Right. And I've talked to thousands myself, and not a single person I've talked to is really cherishing the spreadsheets. But it's a requirement. It needs to get done. Companies need to operate. There's compliance, there's structure, there's various things. Imagine you can do that, but also spend 10% of the time doing it.
Yeah.
And that you can disseminate the information to other people in a more democratized way and open up access to information to people that would otherwise not get it. I mean, to me, it's a really important process, but I also think it's just, we need to be realistic about the incentives and then be open to the idea of if we build a balanced scorecard of success, let's put profitability in one quadrant, let's put employee experience in another, let's put compliance in a third, let's put customer experience in a fourth, and let's not trade off. Let's try and serve all these different people, and it won't be perfect. You could definitely optimize for one against the other three, but I don't think you want to do that in today's reality. I think we're too interconnected, too interdependent. Customers do care about how you treat your employees. Employees do care about how you show up in society and if you're compliant. And companies do care about if you're profitable or not. So I think you do need to, in some cases, build that balanced scorecard. And I think AI provides a great opportunity to level the playing field in some of those areas, whereas traditional models of labor were often very exploitative and really put the employee and pit them against profitability. And that's just not a good space to be. It puts the employee and the employer in an awkward position where we're talking about how much we value each other, but it's very transactional. I would like to get away from that and get into reality. So AI to me is a step forward in the right direction. And I do believe it's going to be a real seed change for organizations and their employees. And I worry about those that may not make the change fast enough because, Bob, this is not going to take 10 years. This is going to be a 12 to 36 month project. It's going to roll through very, very quickly, and it will evolve over time. But a lot of the disruptions are going to occur on the front side of things because there's so much low hanging fruit. Bob, I mean, one example, when I was in a previous HR role, I had 11 people working for me who did translations. 11.
Wow.
They translated from English into French, and that was the full time job. We created training manuals and policies and communications. It was internal and external, but we had 11 people that were translating documents into two different languages. Now I just need myself and 10 minutes of free time, and I can do exactly the same thing with Atlas Copilot or ChatGPT or Gemini. So a lot of these skills are going to be replaced by AI. But then the question is, okay, if that skill goes away, that manual translation, what work replaces it? Is there an opportunity to be more customer focused and to build more relationships, build more partnerships, find more sources of information, do more quality assurance and due diligence? Like you can use the resources in different ways. I don't think it has to be a zero sum game.
It's interesting. I haven't thought about this before, but as you talk about that, what comes to my mind is because a lot of the mundane, transactional stuff gets off of people's plates, that we can move from talking about people to talking to people,
Correct. Yeah.
right? So think about it as I think your use case is beyond HR. I think it really is it's HR plus people leaders, people managers, right? And people are infinitely complex. So the ability to not have to be in front of a spreadsheet, but be in front of a person, like that's where, when we start talking about, more empathetic culture, honestly, your mental health benefits, I think a lot of that comes from I actually get more face time with my boss, right?
Mhm.
I get more face time with my team and understand what's really going on because all that stuff I used to do essentially manually, I don't have to do anymore. I can do it, as you say, in a fraction of the time. What I'm curious about, we've been kind of talking about what I think are kind of category benefits of AI, and you started off like, yes, ChatGPT, obviously, but what Atlas's remit is a little bit different. You guys, and I think very smartly, have taken, kind of a focus area instead of, trying to be all things to any question you could ever ask, right? Is no, there's a domain that we think is really important that's underserved generally by technology, but maybe in an outsized way stands to benefit from the technology. And full disclosure to listeners, I have no financial interest in any of this, but as I try and pay attention to what's going on in the technology world, I haven't seen anybody doing what Atlas is doing. So, do you mind kind of, you know, I don't want you to give away your recipe per se, but could you at least share some of the ingredients that are in the
Sure.
recipe that somebody could say, well, can I just go on ChatGPT and do all this anyway?
Yeah, I call them guiding principles because I think for us we're doing things very intentionally and doing it on purpose. So the first thing you mentioned is the curation. ChatGPT is a wonderful technology. I mean, let's not denigrate what is transformative and will go down in history as kind of the first commercial application of generative AI. Wonderful, and I'm really excited to see what they're going to do into the future as they're continuing to evolve that platform with more capital and things of that nature. That being said, to your point, they are trying to boil the ocean. I mentioned before, if I ask questions of Atlas around 16th century French literature, I'm not going to get an answer because it's not trained on that. We've specifically trained it to be the best HR large language model possible. But why is that important? It's important because HR is not binary. There's context. It's not as simple as saying it's black or white, it's yes or no. That's very easy to train a large language model. You do that actually with a chatbot. It's when there's cultural nuance, geographic nuance, industry nuance. The level of refinement that we have in our large language model is specifically built for HR to serve an HR audience or a people manager audience. So I think the curation of the content is really, really key. Nothing gets on the platform unless somebody approves it. We don't have open source. We specifically choose documents that we want to bring into the platform and we evaluate them. And not every document makes the cut, even from some of the most famous publishers in the world. We have standards around things like being evidence based or being anchored in practicality. And I don't want to have 10,000 articles about hybrid work on my platform. I want to have diversity of thought. I don't want to only ask people from North America and Western Europe what they think. I want to know what's going on in Africa and Asia Pacific and Eastern Europe and South America. And there's lots of great content, Bob. One thing that's really surprised me personally, and I'll be honest, I speak English as my native language. I speak a decent amount of French, and I pass with my Portuguese and my Spanish, but I certainly don't read business literature in anything other than English.
Mm-hmm.
I've challenged the team to go and find content that's not written in English, but that may be transformative, that I as an English speaking HR professional, would never have access to, but I may be missing out on what's happening in Japan because it's written in Japanese. Unless someone translates that for me, I'll never get visibility to it. I'll go back to the same well I went to last month. I'll talk to Harvard, I'll talk to McKinsey, I'll go to Gartner, which are great sources in their own way. But if I want diversity of thought, I need to expand my sources. So we've been challenging the team to go and find content in Spanish, in Hindi, in German, in Japanese, and bring the best forward so that as people are using the platform, which by the way is translated in 97% of the world's languages, you can grab a piece of content that starts out in Spanish, bring it into English, and you get those insights in real time. You're not walled off based on your language. It's much more inclusive. The other secret sauce is not really that secret. And I think I don't want to be the one that tells you Santa Claus doesn't exist. But when it comes to AI, it's not magic. It's math. And it's math based on probability. And it's based on very thoughtful curation of content and a configuration of what we have, which are agents. And what I mean by that is we tell an agent specifically what it can do and can't do. We put guardrails around it, and we introduce context to the agent so it knows before you ask the question the point of view that you come from. One of the most common pieces of feedback that we get about ChatGPT is, Matt, it's great, but it's very generic. Well, of course it is. It's pulling from the entirety of the internet and doesn't know the context in which you operate. But if ChatGPT knew that you worked in retail, that you're based in Massachusetts, that your company's 4,000 employees, that one of your core values is innovation, it would change its answer. It would absolutely, your prompt will indicate the output. So at Atlas, we understand that HR professionals are not prompt engineers, that they need someone, a technology, or in this case, us plus the technology, to shorten the gap between their curiosity and the answer. And we do that by configuring enterprise accounts specifically to meet the needs of the enterprise account. One of our customers is one of the world's largest streaming organizations, and they have a very strong corporate culture. And they were very specific with us to say, hey, when we type in inquiries, we don't want best practices from manufacturing and pharmaceuticals and other industries. We want our answer to come through and our culture to shine through the platform. So what we did was we uploaded all of their core documents into the platform and said, hey, Atlas, when an employee from this company in their own unique instance asks a question, put it through this lens of your culture, both on the way out and on the way back in, so it's more aligned and they're not getting advice that would be run counter to how they want to operate. In this organization's case, they are very much on self-empowerment. They're very performance-driven, but they're also very no-nonsense around being performance-based. They give you autonomy, they give you tools, but they expect big results. They don't operate like other countries that we have or other companies that we have. I have another client that's a large Korean auto manufacturer. Very different culture than that American-based streaming company. They have a different view of the world that works for them and works for their business because it's different in a manufacturing environment than in a technology environment. So we work with the organizations to find the context, and then we're getting smarter ourselves. I mean, Bob, I'm learning stuff every single day. Last week, we were talking to another client. They're a large Canadian retail organization, and they're specifically using Atlas as a research tool. They want to understand best practices, benchmarks, and understand what's going on in the broader industry. And I got a response back from the CHRO, said, Matt, this tool is great, but I'll be honest, every so often when I ask questions about business cases, I get the responses back in British pounds. We're a Canadian company. So as much as I appreciate that, I don't really want to do the currency exchange in real time. I want you to give me the answers in Canadian dollars. And I went, of course you do. Let me go in, make the change in real time. And I've instructed now that organization's agent that every time someone asks a question about finances, it defaults to Canadian currency. Simple. It defaults to the metric system of measurement. It defaults to the UK spelling of certain words.
Right.
Just to make it feel more familiar, I'm doing that heavy lifting up front for them on the configuration so that the user knows that the tool is now operating in their context, and that shortens that path to their answer. So I think that's a secret sauce for us is we don't have an ego. I am very open with my customers that this is going to be an iterative process and you're not going to maybe like phase one, but let's build this together because if we grow this together and train this, I promise you within a couple of days or a week, you're going to be super excited about the outputs that you're getting and you're going to be asking me for more use cases. The problem is that the consumer is still understanding what it all means and the role that they have to play to support AI, but I'm not advocating for a world where humans are out of the loop. Humans need to be in the loop and it's a co-creation process with AI. We're just trying to shorten the amount of variables to make it easier for the user because, Bob, they just want an answer. They don't want to spend 16 hours going doing the research. So if I can help them shorten that path, I'm doing my job.
Well, the iterative part is funny because I think that's what generative means. It keeps learning and it keeps learning and it keeps learning.
Correct.
How long have you guys been in the marketplace now?
So we've been building this for almost 2 years, but we were in the market as of May of last year was our launch date.
Got it. And what would you say, and maybe kind of just put your entrepreneur hat on for a second, what have been some of the key either surprises or lessons learned?
Oh, I've got a third MBA doing this. Running a software company is a lot. It's not for the faint of heart because you're always behind. I'm always behind. It doesn't matter what happens, I'm behind. And consumer expectations often outstrip what's possible. Bob, every sales call I go on, someone asks me if I could convert text into a PowerPoint. God, I would love that. That would be amazing.
Dude, I swear to you, I was trying to do that on Canva last night, and I now have an Upwork person right now doing what you just said.
For me, it's like Valhalla. Like, how many PowerPoint slides have I built over my career? Tens of thousands. I don't want to do that anymore. So if I can type in, hey, build me a slide that looks like this and feels like this and says this and reflects this, if I can build a presentation quickly, that'd be amazing. But that's an example of the market expectation is that AI is a magic 8 ball. I shake it and it gives me my PowerPoint presentation. We're not there yet, but we're making progress really, really fast. I mentioned we can translate in 97% of the world's languages. That's unbelievable. I was practicing today. I've been playing around with policy revisions. We have a couple of new clients coming on board from Europe that are very focused on compliance. We've been testing doing things like give me your PDF of your policy. Let's put it into Atlas. Let's have it analyze the policy for regulatory compliance, for language that's appropriate in your cultural context of your organization, and for brevity and writing styles and spelling and all those things. I push a button, Bob. I upload a file. I wait 15 seconds. It says, here are all the areas that we'd recommend that you improve. Do you want to change them? I go, yes. And I have a brand new policy inside of 90 seconds. Like the amount of time I would have spent before to do the research, look at the policy, analyze it, validate its compliance, run it through 15 layers of my own writing style. And I'm a perfectionist, so I take way too long to write anything. Like it would have taken me a couple of weeks. It took me 90 seconds. And I was able to run one after another, after another, after another, after another. A great example of the work's still important. It has to get done. But do you need an HR person tying up 80 hours of their personal time writing a policy on absenteeism for you? Probably not if there's 3 edits that have to be made. But for me, that's the piece where I get really excited about the application of the technology is it opens up so many options and so many doors. And I've been so impressed by the creativity of HR leaders. We have over 70 predefined prompts on our platform, in large part informed by user feedback. Matt, help me build a better job description. Matt, help me build a pay equity statement. Matt, I want to build a coaching strategy for new campus hires. And we're just building these one by one, and we're optimizing them so that they're as close to one click as possible, just to remove all the transactional pieces as a starting point, and just to help remove some of the work off people's plates.
Okay, so auto magic is one of the things that clients expect auto magic, and we're not all the way there yet.
Not there yet.
What are some other things that you have learned here in the early days of taking this to market?
Here's another really interesting piece. So May of last year, we were talking to a lot of large companies about Atlas, and they were really excited, but they were nervous because generative AI was still new in the market and there wasn't a lot of HR equivalents. Right. Every day now you're seeing Workday's launching something new and Vizier's launch something new. So there's more exposure to it and there's less apprehension. But May of last year, Bob, when we asked customers, do you want to integrate Atlas with your HR technologies? Do you want to be able to ingest your payroll data real time into the platform and have that be analyzed? Do you want to bring in your learning management platform, your applicant tracking platform data? Do you want to plug this in so that you don't have to export a file, upload a file, and just make it seamless? The answer was no, absolutely not. We do not want to integrate AI with absolutely anything in our system because they were terrified about implications to IP and privacy and compliance. And no one wants to be the one to make a decision to bring in a vendor that spoils a company forever, has a massive data breach, causes major compliance issues, and no one wants to be a laughing stock. So most companies will deviate to more of a risk-averse process. They'll build governance committees, they'll build structures around compliance, anything they can do to avoid having to make the decision or to avoid one person having to make the decision. Flash forward now, we're less than a year later, it's the number one question I get. Matt, can you offer integrations? And it's actually a qualifier for buyers now. If we can't, which we can, but if we couldn't, it would preclude us from the process. So in the course of 9 months, companies have gone a complete 180 and said, how fast can you integrate with Workday? How fast can you integrate with SAP? How fast can you integrate with Ultimate Kronos Group? Like how fast can you plug in? Because we want the benefits of real-time insights alongside your external best practices that you've curated alongside of our internal context, policies, communications, core values. They want the whole mosaic of information because they want to look inside voice and outside voice at the same time, which, by the way, Bob, is the right decision. It just took us a bit of time to get there and get over the fact that actually AI is really secure. And actually, we architected at the enterprise level to make it super secure. If you're in an account with an enterprise customer, you don't get to see what's happening in the broader population and vice versa. They don't know what you're uploading. If a company uploads a document, the broad population of Atlas users doesn't get to see that. It's exclusively in that one instance. We don't train our large language models on company information because if we did, we wouldn't have any contracts. So for us, Yeah. So for us, it's really about we're seeing the evolution of the market and how they look at the technology. And now we're getting to a phase where we're getting to this art of the possible. Build me a PowerPoint. Amazing. Let's do that. Matt, can we go bi-directional with information? Can I bring in the outside voice, link it to my inside voice, and pair them together? Of course you can. But now the creativity is setting in, and that's what excites me is because there's some really smart people in human resources that just needed a technology. Like Bob, I'm not a technologist. I can't write a line of code, but I have a really smart tech team, and generative AI is a democratizing force. Generative AI paired with an HR person who cares about people is a powerful 1-2 combination because you can accomplish a lot of great things. That for me is the exciting thing is seeing the evolution of the consumer and what they're looking for it. And we're going to see more and more of that as it becomes more democratized. It's going to be an interesting journey.
I was, the thing that you were saying earlier about the integration of the data, it's like, whoa, go away. No, that's bad. And then fast forward not even a year, and like that is a qualifier to be considered. How much of that do you think is because people have rationally gotten comfortable with the security, blah, 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 and how much of it is emotional FOMO and or like board pressure or some other external pressure FOMO?
It's a blend. It's absolutely a blend. And I can tell they don't often disclose to us when I'm talking to a customer or prospect. I'm doing this because my board says I have to, but I can tell because of the tone. Because if you don't, I can tell. But I would say it's probably 50-50. It's 50% people going, now that I've thought about it, and now that I understand the technology behind it, I know I don't have really much to be concerned about if I work with a partner that I can trust. And if we thoughtfully configure this and put guardrails around the system to mitigate for risks. So I mentioned before, Bob, this aforementioned streaming company. Their roadmap ultimately is to provision access to Atlas to all of their line managers across the business.
Yeah.
But they didn't open it up on day one. They said, let's give it to HR for 6 months and let's let HR test the limits of it and try and break this thing. Let's ask Atlas all the inappropriate questions you can't ask in a court of law. Let's try and do things that are discriminatory and illegal and immoral. And let's see what the large language model has to say. Now, thankfully, we've trained our large language model to be a very good corporate citizen.
To
So it's
not send
not.
people to hell or to jail.
No. And in fact, in that corporate account, if a manager or an HR person says, how do I terminate this employee for doing this? It will say, what a great question. Here's the email for your corporate counsel.
Yes.
It's not going to tell you how to do it. It's not going to give you the toolkit on how to go ahead and make that happen. Bob, I want to terminate somebody because I don't like the country of origin they came from. It's going to say to you, that's an inappropriate question to ask. You should go speak to your HR business partner who can give you some additional information to inform this conversation. So we put guardrails in place to protect ourselves from ourselves. And that gives HR more confidence when we're co-creating things together. Then they go, oh, this isn't so much to worry about. Now they think, who can I give this to? Give this to my managers. Less questions coming in my inbox, less calls about policy interpretation. They can now ask Atlas. My manager's having a tough chat with one of their colleagues about their performance. I can call my HR business partner and I can call them and ask Atlas and look at best practices from both. So we can equip. HR work isn't exclusively the domain of HR. We just get tasked with being the interface of it in the organization. Every leader in the company is a people manager. So we're trying to help people managers have success, but for us, it starts with HR. And that for us is how we think we can solve the problem.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. So for given the fact that like market penetration is still very, very low on this and
Yes.
people are dabbling with ChatGPT as their most of their exposure. But the case is compelling that AI tools like Atlas could be very game changing for a
Yep.
company. If I am an HR or maybe an IT leader, but whoever might at the company be tasked with, hey, I want you to go and see what's out there and come back with what you think we should do. What are some of the top criteria without specking an RFP to Atlas Copilot? What are some of the primary criteria that buyers should be considering?
Let me answer your question a slightly different way.
Okay.
I get asked a lot because there's so many AI solutions entering the market now. Like every week, you're seeing 3 or 4 solutions promising to solve all the world's problems for you, especially in the coaching space and in the talent space. There's a ton of AI coaching tools or talent assessment tools
Yeah.
or recruitment parsing or resume parsing tools with AI. So I get questions a lot, Matt, where should I place my bets? I don't want to buy a technology and have to go out of business 12 months from now, then I have to do it all over again. Who do I place my bets on? The easy thing to do is to follow the traditional players, because every large HCM technology is ultimately going to wrap their software in a generative AI layer. You're going to be able to go into your Workday account and say, hey, Workday, what is the policy on this? And if it's contained in the Workday database in your company, you'll get the insights. Hey, ADP, what is the payroll percentage from March of 2 years ago? It will pull the information from you. It's going to be really powerful search capabilities, which is going to save people time and money. But where I would place my bet, aside from those big behemoths, which are unlikely to be fail because they're too big, is if an organization stopped at wrapping their technology in a generative AI layer and stopped there around the architecture, I'm really concerned about their longevity, because I believe the growth in an AI environment is more network based. I think you grow through partnership. And I think the things that we're doing, for example, is forming partnerships with organizations that have access to information that we couldn't possibly be resourced to maintain. So, Bob, we recently signed a deal with a large payroll company that's going to provision us with access to payroll, regulatory, and tax information in real time through an API for 150 countries. Now you'll be able to search on Atlas, hey, what's the minimum wage in Ohio, and how's it different than Afghanistan? And by Easter, you're going to be able to get that information on your smartphone, boom, real time. And when it changes, update it instantly. So for us, that's an example of, I could have paid a team to go and scour all 50 states for all the regulations and go to all the other 149 countries and download all the PDFs and build a giant spreadsheet and validate and audit every week to make sure there's no new versions. But oh my goodness, would that be a tedious and torturous role in an AI company, or any company for that matter? So let's find the organizations that are incentivized to maintain databases of knowledge because their business model relies upon it. And let's find the mutual benefit. You can have access to my audience of HR professionals that are looking for information, and we'll attribute the sources back to you. And that will drive traffic to your website, to your business, and you may get sales from that. And for me, I don't have to maintain the database. I have to audit it. I have to ensure the integrity of it for my customers, right. But I'm not maintaining databases of knowledge. So for companies that stop at, let me wrap my knowledge in generative AI, to me, that's just an extension of an old, tired, siloed information model. Information is now democratized. It's essentially worthless because it's ubiquitous and free and available to everybody. So find partnerships to be able to support the adjacent use cases where your client has needs. I look for companies that want to partner. The ones that are going to partner are going to have a lot more success. And Bob, in this current environment, you're going to see a lot of companies come out of nowhere and grow very quickly through partnership and get to very critical mass because they're solving a business problem in the margins of all the giants. Yeah. And that's how we position ourselves. I'm not trying to compete head for head with Workday or McKinsey. Like, I'll lose. Or Microsoft. It doesn't make any sense. But I can live in the margin. I can support the HR audience. I can solve their specific use cases. And I can bring inside voice and outside voice, which Workday's probably never going to do. They're going to build more AI functionality natively in their platform. So for me, the problem that we're trying to solve, one of our differentiators is, I'm trying to equip people managers, and in this case, HR leaders, to have success. I'm not trying to extend my dated business model, and I'm not trying to drive revenue through a new vehicle. Yeah. I'm trying to solve the core problem, which means that I have to look outside of my own unique instance and look outside the big world, because HR people are expecting.
For me, that comes back to the word that you used earlier, which is context. How much context does it have? And the more context it's got relative to the topic that you're interested in, the better response that you're going to get. And the narrower the context, the narrower response that you're going to get. This is like a really basic, but I think a really important question. And if you feel like you've already answered it, sorry, is just like, I am a new buyer into this. I'm the HR executive at my company. What are the top 3 use cases? What's the lowest hanging fruit that I should be attacking with this?
Get ready to turn up the volume on your HR game. I'm Jay Arnold, former musician turned HR leader and host of Backstage Pass, the HR Rockstar. Each episode pulls back the curtain on key HR topics, from leadership lessons and bold career pivots to the latest in HR tech and talent strategies, featuring the rock stars within their industries. If you're ready to shake up the status quo and amplify your impact, this is your all-access pass. You can catch the show on the Work-Defying Podcast Network and wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe now, and let's rock the future of work together.
With AI or with Atlas? Because the answer is different depending on the context.
Well, So start with AI generally, and then Atlas in particular.
So I can probably do a parallel between the two. It's just the context would be slightly different. So the three main use cases for me for AI, one is efficiency. That's the most obvious one, the one we all say. You can save time creating documents, doing research, translating, analyzing. It's going to save people tons of time doing administrative activities. That's efficiencies is one. And we're talking to clients now about doing time studies and evaluating the work before and after intervention and doing those things. But surprisingly, not a single customer that we've talked to has said we want to do a time study as a precursor to job loss. They want to redefine the roles. They want to extend service level agreements. They want to extend services. They want to shift and migrate HR professionals to more relationship oriented activities, not transactional activities. So to this point, there hasn't been a conversation around job loss.
Right.
Might it come in the future? Probably. But as of this point in time, it has not been anything requested by any of the close to 1,000 Fortune 5,000 companies we've talked to over the last 18 months. The second area of opportunity is upskilling and reskilling, but in a non-traditional way. So gone are the days, Bob, where you and I would go to a two-week workshop, sit in a classroom, stare at a PowerPoint, and listen to someone lecture at us for 80 hours over 2 weeks. No one ever learns that way. Anybody who understands the basics of adult learning or learning science knows that no one learns through memorization and recitation. Talking at people and broadcasting is the least effective way for most people to learn. People need to get their hands and apply the knowledge. They need to be able to talk about it and share about it and teach other people to embed the knowledge. These are all things that HR people have known forever, but we had limited tools. So we built garbage e-learning programs that were like static and stale and boring, but were compliance requirements. So we did it. Or they built workshops that were inspirational when we sent out surveys to people saying, did you like your experience? And they went, this was amazing. What did you learn? I'm not sure. Like that was the old model. But upskilling and reskilling in an HR environment involving AI means parsing through all of the knowledge to get to the insight to solve the problem you have in that moment. I need to solve this particular problem right now. Let me cut through all the noise to get to the information I need to make an informed decision. And that is learning. It's just learning in a different way. Also, with generative AI, as we mentioned before, it's an iterative process. It's a thinking companion. You put in a prompt, you get a response. Very rarely is it the response that you wanted. So you have to go back and say, do this differently, add more of this, less of that, shift over here, shift over there. But in making those instructions, you're critically thinking about the output from the large language model, and you're tested around asking yourself, is this right? And it causes me to think about things that I wouldn't have otherwise thought of if I'd just been writing something down from my memory. So it's going to allow people to upskill and reskill in a completely different way. One thing we're building in Atlas right now is individual learning pathways. So as people are consuming content, it will recommend a sequence of other content in the future that you can use to deepen your knowledge on a
Now, think
particular
about
subject.
that as an L&D professional and just, truly personalize
Truly personalized.
learning curricula.
Truly personalized. And then the last area of use case, Bob, is compliance. Not the most sexy topic, but critically important in any organization that's publicly traded or has people or customers. The reality is human beings do incredible work, but there's some work that's better done by a computer because it doesn't have the inherent bias. It doesn't get tired. It doesn't have bad days. It didn't get in a fight with their best friend. It didn't have a heavy lunch. Like all these different variables that could affect someone's productivity or performance or quality or passion. AI is the most eager, resilient intern that you ever have. But it needs context. It needs you to give it its information to be effective. And that's where we're trying to solve for that gap. But compliance on things like analyzing trends or looking for patterns to be predictive so you can solve problems proactively as opposed to reacting to them. So those are the three ones: efficiencies, skills building, and then compliance. For me, the three areas I'm looking at when I'm
I
digging
want
into
to
AI.
go. I want to go pick back up. Those are all awesome. The thing that you said earlier, you talked about kind of the cognitive potential tapping out. Like I don't have to think
Yeah,
about it; the computer's going to think for me.
sure.
But my experience, picking up on what you're just saying on the upskilling, reskilling piece, and like rarely does it come back with exactly what you wanted, and that more of this, less of that, whatever. I find them very engaged cognitively, and that it's sparking my thinking. It's like that's cool. Hadn't thought of that, but if that's true, type, 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 type. right? Then tell me more about that. Well, how would that play out? And if that's true, then what would the business implications? What are the risks I haven't thought of in this? And I find it to be a very engaging cognitive experience rather than I'm just going to the ATM asking for an answer, walking away with my $20 answer, and like I didn't really think about it. I just knew the pen. So that's my experience with it. So I really like how you explain that. I wanted to start to kind of land the plane here in a minute. If I'm going to draw back on some of your HR leader experience, but as well as what you've learned at Atlas and just in life. As people are unshackled from some of the transactional things, and they've got the ability to actually look somebody in the face, right, and not talk about people, but talk to people. From your experience, Matt, people management, leadership, followership, what are some of the traits that you have found that as people have more capacity to exercise these are some of the most impactful?
Traits or competencies?
Yeah, in terms of leading people, change management, whatever it might be. But gosh, if I had more time to actually engage with people, these are some of the things that I'd like to see.
I think the most important skill of an HR professional is influence and authority. HR has no power in an organization. You can't bring the proverbial hammer down unless you're taking the compliance angle. More often than not, you're influencing a result by building a relationship. And I think that the opportunity that AI provides is more time to build the relationship so that when you need it and you need to influence a result, you have a relationship built with somebody and there's a conversation that can occur. If you don't know me, Bob, and I'm brand new and I'm supporting you and say what you're doing is completely wrong, do it my way, the chances of you listening to me are probably next to zero. But if we have a relationship and you believe that I have your best interest at heart, you're going to hear me out at least consider my opinion. And that's all I'm looking for as an HR professional, as an audience. I don't need to be the one who makes the decision. I need to make you aware of the implications of your decisions. Yeah. So I think that's a really key piece. But I also think that it's going to allow people to spend more time being curious about their business and more curious about their profession. Now that I can have an instant answer to my question, Bob, you should see my thread on Atlas. It's super embarrassing. I'm asking the most random questions. I'm just at dinner going like, I wonder, what are the immigration requirements if I'm moving from Portugal to Spain? Boop, boop, boop. Here it is. And here's a full scope of what that would be. Normally I would go, oh, okay, I don't want to dig into a Wikipedia file or go into legislation. And no, I can get an instant answer to a very random sporadic question. So for me, I think about today's generation, Bob, the Super Bowl was Sunday. Most people did not watch a single screen. They have multiple screens. They're watching the TV. They've got an iPad. They've got a phone. I'm the same thing. I'm watching the Super Bowl, watching Patrick Mahomes run for his life. And I'm asking questions on Atlas Copilot about context that I'm curious about, and I can do both simultaneously.
Yes.
Like that for me is a really cool part, is we can satisfy the curiosity and really encourage people to be more self-directed in their learning.
Yeah. And one thing that I would add to this is, maybe this is back to your influence when you don't have all the authority, but even when you do, because again, I think the addressable market for this is all people leaders, is more time to listen, right? And to really take, at an individual level, right? Oh, I didn't know you were dealing with that, Matt. Why didn't you know that? Because I never had time to ask you. And so I didn't know. But then broadly, what's sort of the vibe? What's the mood here on the team, at the company? Hey, I kind of keep hearing this recurring theme. Can you learn some of that in a pulse survey? Probably. But, a lot of it really is, I didn't know your mom was sick. Hey, I didn't know that you were dealing with this. Hey, right? And when we talk about bringing your whole self to work, like there's a lot of it, and a lot of the stress we're dealing with, it's got nothing to do with work, but it's got to do with real life. And so I'm very optimistic that one of the, I think very direct benefits of, unburdening from doing the hyper administrative, hey, it took me 3 hours to go try and look up immigrating from Portugal to Spain, is I can actually learn more about you. And what are your career goals? What's going on in your life? What's working about our culture for you? What's not working about, right? I can do stay interviews so like, and actually start to, prevent unwanted attrition. I think there's just so many human benefits that have been lost because I'm still doing long division on a piece of paper instead of using a calculator. It's like, oh, okay, great. Anyway, right? And so I just bought myself a bunch of time. So I think that being able to redirect how people that want to do great work, want to have a positive influence at their company, right? Impact the company, the customers they serve, whatever, are going to have more opportunity to do those things. You agree?
And I agree. And I think it comes down to intentionality on both ends. So we've talked about intentionality and how you want to use artificial intelligence. To your point, I think we need intentionality in what we're going to do with the time we save with artificial intelligence.
Yes.
This isn't any different, Bob. I made the same case around HR digital transformation for 15 years. If you don't have a perspective on what you're going to do with the time that you recoup, I promise you somebody else does. And that might be finance, it might be IT, it might be your board. So one thing I was always very cautious about doing is if I was going to build a business case that involved me spending less time doing something, I always had a strong opinion on what I would be doing with that time and how it would benefit the business.
Yeah.
Because otherwise we would default to just cut the headcount, make the savings, find the efficiencies, let's go on to the next quarter, and miss the opportunity, to your point, to reinvest in employee facing or customer facing activities, which could drive revenue or reduce accidents or increase retention,
Exactly.
which you would never have a sense of the opportunity cost if you simply move to a zero sum of game of how do I reduce my cost using AI. To me, it's about redeployment, but you need to be intentional. And this is why I would encourage HR leaders in particular, have an opinion on what you want to do with your time if you find time savings, and make that case proactively in a business context so that you can get that to be realized. Otherwise, around a boardroom table that you're not invited to, they're going to say, let's bring AI into HR. Let's reduce headcount by 12%. Here you go, CHRO. Let us know when you make this happen.
Yep. No,
I don't want to be on the receiving end of that.
spot on. And well, it's that intentionality, but it's also the business savvy, because the question is going to be, then what is the more value add activity that you're going to replace that with? Because if you don't know the answer, then that could be problematic. If people want to learn more about Atlas, if they would like to contact you, Matt, what are the best ways to do that?
I live on LinkedIn. Find me on LinkedIn anytime. Matt Burns HR on LinkedIn.
Yep.
I post a lot of content. I'm pretty hard to miss. Find me there. And if you're interested in learning more about Atlas Copilot, we offer a 7-day free trial, atlascopilot.com. Go check it out for yourself and give me feedback. We're building this for HR professionals. I love feedback. It gives us a chance to make the product better. So try it out for yourself. Let us know what's working for you, what's not. Looking forward to building a solution that works for all HR leaders globally.
Well, Matt, I appreciate you investing a few minutes. I know you're super busy trying to get a software company, not off the ground at this point, but continue to grow and accelerate, make it as great as you can. I appreciate you sharing your expertise. And again, I think part of the byword for me with this interview is context. You bring the HR context to this, which I think is super important and really critical. So thank you. Thank you for starting Atlas Copilot and your co-founders, Chris and Guillermo, and I don't know the other ones. But
Shane and Marvin. Yeah.
Thank you. So I really appreciate it. Listeners, I hope I hope this didn't feel too much like an Atlas infomercial, but again, just as a little bit of a curator for you, this is, as close as I found so far to something for my HR professional friends, would at least be a great starting point for you to start to learn more about how you can use AI in an HR context to not just make your function better, to make your company better. So with that, thank you so much for taking a few minutes, Matt. Thank you again, and we'll see you next time.
Talk soon.
I know you're